I said no food for you, boy. Are you deaf? The flight attendant slammed her hand on the back of seat 14 billion with enough force that the elderly white woman sitting 2 rows ahead jumped in her seat. The 10-year-old black boy in the window seat did not move. He just kept staring out at the clouds at 35,000 feet. His name was Caleb Sterling. He was flying alone for the first time in his life. And he was wearing a small plastic pin on his shirt that said unaccompanied minor in bright blue letters. The flight attendant, a woman in her late 40s with sharp blue eyes and a tight blonde bun, leaned in close to the boy's face. Hey, look at me when I am talking to you. Your meal voucher is not approved on this flight, so you are not getting any food. Maybe next time your mama will pack you a sandwich. Or are you one of those welfare kids whose mama cannot even afford bread? The white businessman across the aisle laughed loudly. The flight attendant smiled. The boy did not move, did not speak, did not cry. He just reached into the small backpack between his feet. He pulled out a worn leather business card holder. He slid out one single card and held it up to the flight attendant without saying a word. The flight attendant glanced at the card. Then she looked again. Then her entire face went white, because the name printed on the card in elegant gold letters was the name of her own boss, the name on her own paycheck, the name on the side of every airplane in this airline's fleet. The card read, Marcus Sterling, founder and chief executive officer, Sterling Continental Airways. Before this story breaks your heart and rebuilds it again, do me one small favor. If you believe a child's worth is not measured by the color of their skin, hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing. Now let's rewind. Because to understand what just happened in seat 14 billion at 35,000 feet, you have to go back 46 years. Marcus Sterling was born in 1979 in a small town called Greenwood, Alabama. His father, a mechanic named Joseph Sterling, died of a heart attack when Marcus was 7. His mother Vera raised him and his little sister Tasha by herself for the next 11 years. Vera worked 2 jobs. She cleaned hotel rooms during the day and worked the night shift at a small diner. Some weeks she slept only 4 hours a night, but she never let her 2 children go to bed hungry, not even once. When Marcus was 13, he got a job at the small regional airport 30 miles outside of Greenwood. He swept the floors. He wiped down the seats in waiting areas. He earned $3 an hour. He gave half of every paycheck to his mother. He saved the other half in an old coffee can hidden under his bed. By 16, that coffee can held $1,200. He used the money to buy his first old textbook on aviation engineering at a yard sale for $2. Marcus Sterling fell in love with airplanes the way other boys his age fell in love with cars. By 18, he had earned a partial scholarship to study aerospace engineering at Tuskegee University. By 26, he was working as a junior engineer at a major airline in Atlanta. By 34, he had used his savings plus a small business loan to start his own regional airline. He named it after his father, Sterling Continental Airways. The first 10 years were brutal. Marcus worked 16-hour days. His wife Diana raised their 2 children mostly by herself. But by the time Marcus was 44, Sterling Continental Airways had grown from one small regional plane to a fleet of 47 aircraft serving 32 American cities. The company was now valued at over $4 billion. Marcus Sterling had become one of the few black billionaires in the entire airline industry. But Marcus never forgot where he came from. He raised his 2 children, Caleb and his older sister Maya, with one absolute rule. They were not allowed to use their father's name to get special treatment anywhere, ever. Caleb was Marcus's youngest child. He was 10 years old now. He was a quiet boy. He read a lot of books. He loved drawing pictures of airplanes. He had asked his father for over a year if he could fly somewhere by himself, just like a grown-up. Marcus had finally agreed. Caleb was going to fly from Atlanta to Chicago to visit his grandmother Vera, who was now 78 years old. Marcus had given his son one of his old business cards, just in case there is an emergency, son. But Marcus had also told Caleb very clearly, son, you are not going to use that card to get special treatment. You are going to fly like every other passenger. Are we clear? Caleb had nodded. Yes, Daddy. What Marcus did not know that morning was that one of his flight attendants, a woman named Linda Crawford, had been quietly mistreating black passengers on his airline for almost 3 years. Linda had been with Sterling Continental for 19 years. She had a clean record on paper. But she had a habit of being just a little bit colder, just a little bit ruder to passengers with darker skin, especially the children flying alone. That morning at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, Caleb Sterling boarded Flight 2147 to Chicago. He was wearing a simple gray sweatshirt and blue jeans. His hair was in small twists. He sat down in seat 14 billion by the window. He pulled out a book and started to read. Linda Crawford walked down the aisle pushing the food cart 40 minutes into the flight. The system showed that seat 14 billion had been assigned a hot meal voucher because Caleb was an unaccompanied minor on a 5-hour flight. But Linda had quietly changed it that morning at the gate. The note now read, "Voucher invalid." Linda stopped the cart at row 14. She did not give him a hot meal. She did not give him a snack box. She did not even give him a cup of water. She just kept pushing the cart forward. Caleb politely raised his hand 5 minutes later when the cart came back through the aisle. "Excuse me, ma'am, I think you missed my meal." Linda turned around. Her face was already cold. "I did not miss anything, boy. Your meal voucher is not in the system, so no food for you." Caleb blinked. "But ma'am, my dad said the meal was already paid for." Linda leaned down. Her voice got louder, loud enough for the passengers in 3 rows around her to hear. "I said no food for you, boy. Are you deaf?" That was when she slammed her hand on the back of his seat. The white businessman across the aisle in seat 14C, a sales executive named Gregory Patterson, laughed. He thought it was funny. The elderly white woman 2 rows ahead, a retired teacher named Margaret Henderson, did not laugh. She turned around in her seat. She was watching now. Her hands were shaking on her lap. Caleb pulled out the leather business card holder. He held the card up to Linda Crawford without saying a word. Linda glanced at it. Then she looked again. Her eyes went to the gold letters at the top. Then her eyes went to the small handwritten note on the back of the card in a father's careful handwriting. "Property of Caleb Sterling, age 10, if lost, please return to my dad." Linda Crawford's entire face went white. Her hands started shaking. She tried to laugh it off. Oh, that is funny. Where did you get this card, boy? Did you steal it from somebody?" Caleb did not answer. He just kept holding the card up. Linda swallowed hard. She looked around the cabin. Gregory Patterson was no longer laughing. He was staring at his lap. Margaret Henderson was already standing up in the aisle. Her phone was in her hand. She had been recording the entire thing for the last 4 minutes. "Ma'am," Margaret said quietly. Her voice carried through the cabin. "I have your face on video. I have your name tag. I have everything you said to that child, and I am going to make sure your boss sees every single second of it." Linda's mouth opened. Then it closed. She tried to grab the camera. Margaret stepped back. "Do not touch me. Do not touch this phone." The retired teacher walked slowly to the back of the plane. She stayed there with her phone in her hand for the rest of the flight. Caleb Sterling slowly put the business card back in his backpack. He turned and looked out the window again. He did not cry. He did not say another word for the rest of the flight. What Caleb did not know was that Margaret Henderson had already emailed the video to Sterling Continental Airways customer service from the air using the in-flight Wi-Fi. The video had been forwarded immediately to the executive office. Marcus Sterling was sitting in his Atlanta corner office at 11:47 in the morning when his executive assistant walked in carrying a tablet. Her face was very pale. "Sir, you need to watch this video. It is about your son." Marcus Sterling watched the video twice. He did not speak. By the time the video ended for the second time, his hands were shaking so hard he could not hold the tablet anymore. He picked up the phone. He called the captain of Flight 2147 directly. "Captain, are you on the ground yet?" "Yes, sir. We just landed at gate B14. "Good. Keep all passengers on the plane, especially Linda Crawford. I am flying to Chicago right now. I will be there in 2 hours. Tell my mother she can take Caleb to her car. But Linda Crawford does not leave that aircraft until I personally walk on board. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." Marcus Sterling boarded his private jet at 12:18. He landed at Chicago O'Hare at 2:04. The passengers on Flight 2147 had been kept on the plane for almost 2 hours by then, until Marcus Sterling walked on board. The 46-year-old billionaire stepped onto his own airplane wearing a simple dark suit. He walked slowly down the aisle to row 14. Linda Crawford was sitting in the small jump seat at the back of the cabin. Her face was already wet with tears. She knew. Marcus Sterling stood in the middle of the aisle. He looked at every single passenger in the cabin. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Marcus Sterling. I am the founder and chief executive officer of Sterling Continental Airways. The little boy who was sitting in seat 14 billion today was my son Caleb. He is 10 years old. He had a paid meal voucher that one of my own employees deliberately invalidated this morning before takeoff. She did this because of the color of his skin. She has been doing this to other black children flying alone on my airline for almost 3 years. We just pulled her records this morning. There are 47 separate complaint reports. The cabin was completely silent. Marcus turned and looked at Linda Crawford. Linda, your employment with Sterling Continental Airways is terminated as of this moment. You will not be receiving severance. You will be escorted off this aircraft by airport police, who are waiting for you at the jet bridge. You will also be charged with verbal child abuse under federal aviation regulations, because my son was a minor in your professional care. Linda started sobbing. Marcus did not look at her again. He turned back to the passengers. To every single one of you who watched my son being humiliated today and said nothing, I want you to think about that tonight. Especially the gentleman in seat 14C, he looked directly at Gregory Patterson. The businessman did not lift his head. But to the woman in seat 12A, Mrs. Margaret Henderson, who recorded the video and emailed it to my company from the air. Ma'am, I want to thank you publicly. You will be receiving a letter of personal thanks from me, plus lifetime first-class flight benefits on this airline. I'm also sending a $5,000 donation in your name to any charity you choose. Margaret Henderson, the 71-year-old retired teacher, started crying quietly in seat 12A. Marcus Sterling walked off the plane. Within 48 hours, the video had been picked up by every major news network. Within 72 hours, Sterling Continental Airways had announced a complete top-to-bottom review of every flight attendant complaint history in the company's database. 23 additional employees were terminated within the next 30 days. That night at his mother's small house outside Chicago, Marcus Sterling sat on the couch next to his 10-year-old son. Vera Sterling, now 78 years old, sat across from them in her old rocking chair. Caleb had finally cried 2 hours earlier in his grandmother's arms. Marcus put his arm around his son. Son, I am so sorry that happened to you today. The reason your daddy works so hard is so that no black child anywhere in this country has to be treated the way you were treated today. Do you understand? Caleb nodded slowly. Yes, Daddy. And son, you did the right thing. You did not yell. You did not cry in front of her. You showed her that card without one word. Your grandfather Joseph would have been so proud of you tonight. Vera Sterling smiled from her rocking chair. Her eyes were wet. 3 weeks later, Marcus Sterling announced the launch of the Joseph Sterling Foundation, named after his late father. The foundation provides free flight passes, mentorship programs, and college scholarships for black children from low-income families across America. The foundation was funded with an initial $50 million personal donation from Marcus Sterling. Caleb Sterling, now 11 years old, sits on the foundation's youth advisory board. He still flies on his father's airline. But now every black child flying alone on Sterling Continental Airways gets a special little pin on their boarding pass. The pin reads, Caleb's crew, welcome aboard, friend. So here is what I want to leave you with tonight. Linda Crawford spent 19 years working for a black man and never once stopped to ask herself why she treated his black customers the way she did. She thought that little boy in seat 14 billion was nothing. She did not know that a child's worth is never measured by what is on the outside. It is measured by the love that raised him. Caleb Sterling was raised by a father who swept floors at a regional airport for $3 an hour and built a $4 billion airline. He was raised by a grandmother who worked 2 jobs and never let her children go to bed hungry. Think about the Caleb Sterlings around you right now. The quiet black children in worn sneakers and simple sweatshirts. The kids you might walk past without looking twice. The world has been deciding their worth for generations based on the color of their skin. The world has been wrong every single time. If this story moved you tonight, do me one final favor. Smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story, and drop a comment below telling me about a Caleb in your own life. The quiet one. The one whose worth nobody bothered to ask about. Because the world is full of children whose fathers built empires while nobody was watching. And the only question that matters tonight is whether we are humble enough to treat every single child the way we would treat the child of the most powerful person in the room. See you in the next story.